Joining us here in the studio is Tamer Qarmout. He's an assistant professor of public policy at the Doha Institute for Graduate Studies. Good to have you with us. So what would the implications be of such a boycott movement touching giants like Google, Amazon, Microsoft?
Sami, the implications would be significant, especially on the long run, if the momentum keeps going when it comes to this. But for me, the human factor is the most critical factor. Let's see who are these students. These are students of Ivy League universities, elite universities, most of them. These are the universities that provide the pipeline of employees for the same companies we're talking about, the future leader of these companies. So it's a critical juncture. We're talking about a significant event to see these Ivy League universities rebelling against the establishment, against the corporates.
So this might not be confined. If these students are successful, this kind of boycott, divestment effort might not be confined entirely to classrooms and universities if they succeed.
Of course, because they're highly correlated with the workforce, with the economy. So, and when we see students who stand on principled values, on ideas, you cannot buy these with money. You know, it's hard because this is a value system. You are in conflict with an entire value principle system that these students represent.
But so, Tamer, do you really think they can succeed here, given the forces they're going up against?
It's not going to be an easy battle, but the train has left the station, Sami. This is a snowball now. It's a moving snowball. And all what we wish for is for it to grow, and then we see a huge shift in public opinion and a new reality is forming, you know, against this oppression.
Talking about things spreading, are we already seeing the protests at least spreading geographically now, going more global?
So interestingly, I think Europe hosted the first or early demonstrations and protests, and now we see a huge shift. I mean, the momentum is going to the U.S. The U.S. has become a center, and because of the U.S. Symbolism and its positioning on the world mapping, I think now it's spreading all over the globe, you know. So we see it in Europe, we see it in Australia, and I think we'll see more and more. I mean, of course, there's so many countries who already took a principled position to support Palestine: China, Russia, other BRICS countries, Latin American countries. We don't see students there demonstrating because their governments have took the right stand. So, but the problem is with the governments and the politicians who took the opposite stand, or the wrong stand on this, by protecting Israel. So it's good to see these students, you know, protesting and trying to put pressure on their governments to end this bloodshed.
Tamer, bear with us for a second, because talking about positions, the politicians taking a position, let's listen in to what Bernie Sanders had to say.
No, Mr. Netanyahu, it is not anti-Semitic or pro-Hamas to point out that in a little over 6 months, your extremist government has killed 34,000 Palestinians and wounded more than 78,000. 70% of whom are women and children. It is not anti-Semitic to point out that your bombing has completely destroyed more than 221,000 housing units in Gaza, leaving more than 1 million people homeless, almost half the population. Mr. Netanyahu, anti-Semitism is a vile and disgusting form of bigotry that has done unspeakable harm to many millions of people. But please, do not insult the intelligence of the American people by attempting to distract us from the immoral and illegal war policies of your extremist and racist government.
How significant is it when we see prominent U.S. Jewish figures telling Israeli officials off for how they use the anti-Semitism charge?
It is significant, and because of who Bernie Sanders is. I mean, Bernie Sanders specifically represents, he's a leader of a progressive movement, especially of the young voters, especially in the Democratic parties, the Democratic Party. And I think there's the fact that he's saying this bluntly and accusing Netanyahu of insulting the American people and even the Jewish people by saying this, I think it's significant because it will just add more momentum to the entire movement. And historically, let's remind everyone, the Jewish people, Muslim people, Christians in this part of the region, especially in Palestine, never had an issue of problems of coexistence. The problem is Zionism. And Zionism is the problem here. And this is something the U.S. politicians have tried to deflect by equaling Zionism with anti-Semitism, criticizing Israel with anti-Semitism, and that's totally wrong. The problem is with Zionism as a movement, not with Judaism, especially in this part of the world.
All right, thanks so much, Tamer Qarmout.
My pleasure.